My name is Lydia Burchett, and I will be talking about my AP art class today. Most kids just think, oh my god, colors and shapes due by midnight. It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, you can sort of.
It's bad. It's bad. It's bad. It's so bad. It's so bad. But I love it. But I would like to see an AP Chem kid try. Most of my work is made based off of my pain condition. I have fibromyalgia. So I have this pain condition. It affects my whole life. I don't like to talk about it too much because I don't like to take myself too seriously. So a lot of my work is based off of that, and in the beginning, my topic in AP Art, we call it an SI. That's Sustained Investigation. So that has kind of changed for me throughout the year. Initially, for me, at first, I was just kind of trying to navigate how the world sees me and how I'm perceived as, like, either I'm not disabled enough or I'm too disabled. Either, you know, I don't deserve my accommodations or I need to be kept in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. When, like, it's really just a weird gray area. You know, there is no right answer. There's no exact amount of disabled you can be. And so a lot of my pieces were focusing on that. It's a weird middle ground. And so I tried explaining how to navigate that, how I see that, how the world sees that. But then it kind of shifted into a point of anger, and that topic just really, like, upset me, and I was making all these pieces, like, a very particular scene in my mind. I was, like, painting those, and then I realized that doesn't make any sense to anybody, because it's a very specific lived experience, and that's not gonna make sense, and it's okay that it doesn't make sense, but I really wanted it to, and I was getting so frustrated. I had to take a break for a long time. I, like, had to stop making for a little bit. I hated all the work I was doing. And then I started to navigate into just, like, okay, well, why is this so upsetting to me? You know, what's going on? Because it is such a tough discussion with yourself and with others. And it's so vulnerable that it's even harder to, like, make work and show it. Like, showing work is vulnerable on its own, but showing something so vulnerable, like, especially on the medical side of it. So I kind of started and shifted my sustained investigation to focus on that, to focus on how I'm perceived in the world, how that makes me feel, you know, what does it mean to live my life? How does that change me? How does that change a person? I'm still making work about my pain, but it's kind of transformed into just this beautiful collage of, like, different moments and all these different feelings that kind of combine to form that really tough discussion. A big part of AP Art is connecting your materials to your art piece and what you're thinking. So not just like, oh, I want to make painting because I like painting. I like painting so much. I do like painting, but it's more of like, how can I connect this material and this process to a piece of yourself or a piece of the question that you're trying to answer. So for me, I had to try and find materials and processes that kind of relate to my pain and my lived experience. For my materials, I began in the start of my process with using oil paints. Now, I chose oil paints because there would be these times where people would kind of treat me like a child. And, you know, there is something to be said about your brain doesn't fully develop until you're 21 or whatever age it is now. But, like, I'm also 17 years old. They'll still kind of treat me like a little kid who can't go out and can't do things and can't make some decisions for yourself. Because it would just be like people talking for me, or people would talk to other people about me instead of just asking me. And there was kind of a feeling of that lack of dignity. You know, I felt like that was taken away from me. I didn't have that. I had no control. There was no part of that I felt like I was in charge of and that I was being treated maturely and dignified. So I kind of wanted to take back some of that. I chose oil paints as a material because they've always been so significant in art history. They've always been seen with a certain regard of that is high quality, that is dignified, that is art. And there's also a level of maturity to it because people have been using oil paints for, like, time and time and time. Okay, people have always been it to the olden days. Another cool thing about oil paints is you have so much more control over how it moves on the painting, how it moves on the brush, because it dries so slow. You have control and you have time to work with it. And that was something really meaningful to me as well, because with my condition, my hands, I don't have a lot of fine motor skills. What I loved about oil painting is that I could go back to it. I could take breaks. I could take time. So yeah, I loved that I could like work with oil paints for as long as I wanted, and I could just have fun with it. And it was so smooth and so dignified, and also it's just beautiful. I also wanted something that didn't require me to hold this like brush, kind of, because you have to, it's like holding a pencil. That hurts my hands. I can't do that. I tried to switch to something that felt a little bit easier on my hands, because that's a huge part for me, you know, dexterity. So I switched to oil pastels because I loved the way that like I could hold it like a crayon. Yeah, oil pastels and oil sticks. I switched to those. I love the way that I could hold it like a crayon, and just draw and just color. And I felt like a little kid. And that also tied into my question, because that was something that is seen so like crayons are very much of a childhood thing. They're not seen at a higher respect in art, I don't think. Then I started switching into a more 3D space. Now, my portfolio is 2D, but there were also some things that I felt would really be better explained with a little bit more dimension. I switched to just like a whole bunch of materials. I used like wool. I used a lot of things to signify how I was feeling about my body. So that meant like for one piece, I used wool and I used wire. And it was all about how like some parts of me I treat so carefully and so fragilely, but then also like it's so fragile and so soft and comforting, but it's also so painful. You know, that kind of like balance between like sharp and soft, pretty much. Yeah, and then for my last piece, not the one that I'm working on right now, but my most recent piece, I also worked on carving, which was really cool for me, because that took a lot of manual labor. That was difficult. That's difficult for anybody, but for me especially, I had to hold that like dowel to just carve and carve and carve. That was rough. I had to take multiple day breaks, okay? But I honestly kind of love that, because that got to tie into my piece. That was all about, hey, taking breaks. This is how I work. This is how I function. I have to take breaks. I have to do things like that. So I create my work through a lot of different ways. Most of the time, I don't come across my ideas by sketching it out, because I do not sketch. It's a thing that I need to get better at. Most of my ideas, honestly, like, they come to me when I'm really tired, or I'm falling asleep, or I'll, like, take a shower. Because those are places that are just for me. And those are the ideas that I feel most secure in, because a lot of times I'll get suggestions or ideas from outside sources, and, like, they're not bad. They're not bad ideas, but they're not me. Like, they'll be great. They'll be fantastic, but they're not what I want to do, and I wouldn't feel comfortable doing it. But yeah, that's my story. That's what AP Art has been. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. For my future pieces, I would be really excited to kind of just keep going with this outside of AP. AP has a very strict curriculum of you have to follow these things, you have to follow these guidelines. And so I'm so interested to see what my art becomes outside of that. Because I'm not a serious person, and I feel like AP is so serious and so personal. And I would love to step outside of that and just make what I want to make and have it tie into nothing. Okay, I think that wraps it up. I think I'm done. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. Yeah. Bye. That was so embarrassing.